I never thought the worst day of my life would start with roses. There they were, sitting on my kitchen counter, a dozen red roses in a crystal vase, their petals perfect, their stems freshly cut. My fiancé, Derek, had left them there that morning before heading to work. The card read, "To my future, to forever." I'd smiled when I read it, actually believed those words meant something. That was 3 hours ago, before I decided to surprise him at his office with lunch, before I walked in on him with her. Her name was Sienna. She worked in his department. The girl he always said was just a colleague, but colleagues don't kiss like that, don't tear at each other's clothes in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon with the office door barely locked. I stood there frozen, the bag of Chinese takeout slipping from my fingers, hitting the floor with a crash that finally made them stop. Derek's face went white. Sienna smirked. "Babe, I can explain," he started, scrambling to button his shirt. But I was already backing away, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I didn't want explanations. I wanted to disappear, to unsee what I'd just seen, to rewind time to when I still believed in forevers and roses and stupid promises. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It really helps me keep bringing you these emotional journeys. I ran, down the hallway, into the elevator, out into the bright afternoon sun that felt too cheerful for the way my world was crumbling. I walked for blocks, not knowing where I was going, my phone buzzing with Derek's calls that I ignored. Finally, I ended up at a small cafe on a street I didn't recognize, and I collapsed into a corner booth, fighting back tears. That's when he walked in. I noticed him immediately, not because I was looking, but because everyone did. He moved through the cafe like he owned it, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than my rent. His face was all sharp angles and intensity, the kind of handsome that felt dangerous. 2 men flanked him, and the barista's hands shook slightly as she took his order. I should have looked away, should have minded my own business, but something about him held my attention, made me forget for a moment that my life had just imploded. He caught me staring. Our eyes met across the cafe, and I froze. His gaze was steel gray, piercing, assessing. I expected him to look away, to dismiss me as just another face in the crowd. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, curiosity flickering across his features. Then his phone rang, breaking the moment. He answered it, his expression hardening as he listened to whoever was on the other end. When he spoke, his voice was low but commanding, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to be obeyed. "Handle it," he said, and ended the call. I looked down at my untouched coffee, my cheeks burning. What was I doing? Staring at strangers like some desperate, "Mind if I sit?" I jerked my head up. He was standing right beside my booth, those gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. The cafe's pretty empty," I managed, gesturing at the dozen vacant tables around us. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "It is, but you look like someone who could use some company." He slid into the seat across from me before I could protest. "I'm Dante." "I'm Ella," I said, hating how my voice shook. "Ella," he repeated, like he was testing how it felt on his tongue. "You've been crying." It wasn't a question. I touched my face instinctively, feeling the dried tear tracks I'd forgotten about. "Bad day," I said shortly. "Those happen?" He leaned back, studying me with unnerving focus. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Want to tell me why a stranger just decided to crash my pity party?" That almost smile returned. "Because you look like you needed saving." "I don't need saving," I shot back, even though that was exactly what I needed. "Everyone needs saving sometimes, Ella. The question is whether they're brave enough to accept it." Before I could respond, one of his men approached the table, leaning down to whisper something in Dante's ear. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. A coiling tension, a readiness for violence that made my survival instincts scream. "I have to go," he said, standing, "but I'd like to see you again." "Why?" The word escaped before I could stop it. He pulled out a business card, set it on the table between us. "No name, just a phone number embossed in silver. Because I think you're more interesting than you realize. And because—" He paused, something almost gentle crossing his hard features. "You deserve better than whoever made you cry." Then he was gone, sweeping out of the cafe with his men trailing behind him, leaving me alone with a business card and 1,000 questions. I should have thrown the card away, Should have forgotten about the mysterious stranger with the dangerous eyes and the cryptic words. But 3 days later, when Derek showed up at my apartment begging for forgiveness, calling me nothing special when I refused to take him back, swearing to anyone who'd listen that I was nothing compared to Sienna, I pulled out that card, and I called the number. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. I was beginning to think you wouldn't call. Dante's voice was smooth, confident, exactly as I remembered it. I'd rehearsed what I'd say a dozen times, but now that I had him on the line, my carefully planned words evaporated. I was sitting on my apartment floor surrounded by packed boxes, Derek's things that I'd thrown together in a fury, and I felt utterly lost. I don't even know why I'm calling, I admitted. Yes, you do. The certainty in his tone made me bristle. Oh, really? Enlighten me. You're calling because someone made you feel small, and you're tired of feeling that way. You're calling because you saw something in me at that cafe, something that told you I'm not like the men who've disappointed you, and you're calling because you're brave enough to want more than what you've been settling for. I should have been offended by his presumption. Instead, I felt seen in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. That's a lot of assumptions from one conversation, I said quietly. Am I wrong? I pulled my knees to my chest, staring at Derek's boxes. No, you're not wrong. Then let me take you to dinner. Tomorrow night. I'll send a car. I don't even know you. You'll learn. There was something in his voice. Not a threat, but a promise. And maybe it was the anger still burning in my chest. Or maybe it was the way Derek's words, "she's nothing," kept echoing in my head. But I heard myself say, okay, 8 o'clock. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. He ended the call before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone and wondering what I'd just agreed to. The next evening, I stood in front of my closet in my underwear, second-guessing everything. What did something that makes you feel powerful even mean? I'd pulled out and rejected 6 different dresses. Too conservative, too flashy, too desperate, too boring. Finally, I settled on a simple black dress, elegant, fitted, with a neckline that was modest but still showed I had confidence. I paired it with heels that added 3 inches to my height and made me feel like I could conquer the world, or at least survive dinner with a mysterious stranger. At exactly 8 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Outside, I grabbed my purse, took one last look in the mirror, and headed downstairs. The car waiting at the curb wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined something flashy, ostentatious, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. Instead, it was a sleek black sedan with tinted windows, expensive but understated. The driver, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor, opened the door for me. "Miss Ella, I'm Vincent. Mr. Moretti asked me to escort you to dinner." "Moretti," I repeated, testing the name. Dante Moretti. The drive took 20 minutes, winding through the city until we reached a part of town I'd never been to, where the buildings were older, more elegant, and money whispered instead of shouted. We pulled up in front of a restaurant with no sign, just a discreet doorway flanked by 2 men in suits. They nodded at Vincent as he opened my door, their eyes assessing me briefly before returning to their watch. Inside, the restaurant was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, the soft murmur of conversation from the handful of occupied tables. A hostess in a tailored black dress appeared immediately. "Miss Ella, please follow me. Mr. Moretti is waiting." She led me through the main dining room to a private area in the back, separated from the rest of the restaurant by velvet curtains. And there he was, standing when he saw me approach, looking even more devastatingly handsome than I remembered in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been painted on. "Ella." He said my name like it was something precious. "You look stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself," I managed, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He smiled, a real smile this time, not just the ghost of one, and pulled out my chair. Once I was seated, he settled across from me, and I noticed details I'd missed at the cafe. The small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his hands, large and strong, moved with careful precision, the intensity in his eyes that never quite faded, even when he smiled. "I took the liberty of ordering," he said. "I hope you don't mind. The chef here is exceptional, and I wanted you to experience his best work." "Presumptuous," I said, but I was smiling. "It's one of my defining characteristics." A waiter appeared with wine, pouring us each a glass of something red that probably cost more than my car payment. When we were alone again, Dante raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. I clinked my glass against his, and something in his expression made my heart race. "So," I said, taking a sip of wine that tasted like velvet and dark cherries, "are you going to tell me what you do, Dante Moretti? Because that cafe, those men, this restaurant, you're not exactly an accountant." His smile turned slightly dangerous. "No, I'm not an accountant. Then what are you?" He studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much truth I could handle. "I'm a businessman. I run various enterprises throughout the city. Import, export, real estate, investments. That's a very diplomatic answer. It's an honest one. It's also incomplete." He leaned forward, his gray eyes locking onto mine. "You're perceptive. I like that. Yes, Ella, it's incomplete. Because the complete answer would change how you look at me. And I'm enjoying the way you're looking at me right now too much to ruin it quite yet." My pulse hammered. "Are you dangerous?" "Yes." The honesty of that single word stole my breath. Not a deflection, not a charming dismissal, just the truth, laid bare between us. "Should I be afraid of you?" I asked. "No." His voice softened. "Never of me. I would never hurt you, Ella. But there are people who'd use you to get to me if they knew you mattered. That's the danger. I don't matter. We just met." Something flickered in his expression. Determination. Possession. Something that made heat pool low in my stomach. "You will," he said simply. Over the next 2 weeks, Dante became the center of my universe. He called every morning, his voice the first thing I heard when I woke up. He sent flowers to my apartment. Not roses. Never roses after I told him about Derek's betrayal. But peonies and orchids and arrangements so beautiful they transformed my small living room. He took me to dinners at exclusive restaurants, walks through parts of the city I'd never explored, late-night conversations that stretched until dawn, and slowly, carefully, he revealed himself to me. "My father built an empire," he told me one night as we sat in his penthouse overlooking the city. "Not always legally, not always kindly, but he built something that endures, something that employs hundreds of families, keeps neighborhoods safe, maintains order where the law fails." I'd suspected, of course. The deference people showed him, the way conversations stopped when he entered a room, the ever-present bodyguards. It all pointed to one conclusion. Dante Moretti was a mob boss, the head of a criminal organization that controlled vast swathes of the city. I should have run. Any sane person would have. But there was more to him than the dangerous reputation, more than the cold authority he wielded so effortlessly. I saw it in small moments, the way he tipped servers generously, how he remembered details about everyone he met, his fierce protection of his people. When an elderly woman at a cafe spilled her coffee, Dante was the one who helped her, who made sure she got home safely, who paid for her groceries for a month. "You're not what I expected," I told him that night in his penthouse. "What did you expect?" "Someone crueler, someone who cared less." He pulled me close, his hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. "I've done cruel things, Ella. I won't lie to you about that. In my world, mercy is often seen as weakness, and weakness gets people killed. But," he paused, his thumb brushing my cheek, "I believe in protecting what's mine. I believe in loyalty, in honor, in taking care of the people who depend on me. Does that make me a good man? Probably not. But I'm trying to be a better one." I kissed him then, unable to resist the pull between us any longer. His lips were firm, commanding, and when he kissed me back, it felt like falling and flying all at once. But our happiness was fragile, and I should have known it couldn't last. 3 weeks after our first date, Derek showed up at my apartment. I'd just gotten home from work, was still in my scrubs from my shift at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. The last person I expected or wanted to see was my ex-fiancé, but there he was, leaning against my door with that familiar smile that used to make me melt and now just made me tired. "What do you want, Derek?" "To talk. Please, Ella, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let him in. He walked through my apartment like he still belonged there, picking up the framed photo Dante had given me. The two of us at dinner, laughing at something I couldn't even remember, and setting it down with exaggerated care. "New boyfriend?" he asked, his tone too casual. "Not your business. I made a mistake, Ella. Sienna was... it was nothing. just a stupid fling. But you and me were real. We're forever." I stared at him in disbelief. Forever? Derek, you cheated on me. You called me nothing when I wouldn't take you back. You don't get to show up here months later and pretend. I was angry. I was hurt. But I've had time to think, and I realize now that you're the one I want. Come on, Ella. What we had was special. This new guy, he gestured at the photo dismissively. He's probably just a rebound. Is he treating you right? Does he even know the real you? Before I could respond, my apartment door opened. I'd given Dante a key the week before, and now he stood in the doorway, his expression utterly cold as he took in the scene. "You must be Derek," Dante said, his voice dangerously soft. Derek's face went pale. He clearly recognized Dante, or at least recognized the type of man he was, and his bravado crumbled instantly. "I was just leaving," Derek stammered. "Yes, you were." Dante stepped aside, allowing Derek to scramble past him. But before Derek could escape entirely, Dante caught his arm, leaning in to murmur something I couldn't hear. Whatever he said made Derek's face go even whiter, and then he was gone, practically running down the hallway. Dante closed the door and turned to me, concern replacing the ice in his expression. "Are you okay?" I nodded, my hands shaking slightly. "He just showed up. I didn't invite him. I was telling him to leave when you—" "I know." Dante crossed to me, pulling me into his arms. "I know you were, Dolcezza. I heard enough before I came in. What did you say to him?" A grim smile touched his lips. "I explained that if he ever bothered you again, if he ever so much as looked at you from across a street, he would regret it for the rest of his very short life." I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt protected, cherished in a way I'd never experienced before. "He called me nothing," I whispered against Dante's chest. "Made me feel worthless." Dante's arms tightened around me. "You are everything, Ella. Everything. And I will spend every day proving that to you if you'll let me." I looked up at him, this dangerous, complicated, surprisingly gentle man who'd walked into my life at exactly the right moment. "I'm falling for you," I admitted, "and it terrifies me." "Good." He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, finally my lips. "Because I fell for you the moment I saw you crying in that cafe, and I have no intention of letting you go." Living in Dante's world meant adapting to new realities. There were bodyguards now, discreet but ever-present, who appeared whenever I left my apartment. There were certain restaurants we avoided, certain neighborhoods that were not safe, for reasons Dante never fully explained. There were phone calls at odd hours that would make his expression harden, meetings he'd leave in the middle of the night to attend, and long stretches where I wouldn't hear from him and had to trust he'd come back safely. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. "You worry about me," Dante said one morning, catching me staring at the door he just walked through after another mysterious 4 a.m. departure and return. We were in his penthouse, morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below us like a kingdom. I was wearing one of his shirts, and he'd just emerged from the shower, his hair damp and his chest bare. "Of course I worry. You disappear in the middle of the night to do God knows what, come back looking like you've been through a war. I'm always careful." "That's not the same as safe." He crossed to where I stood by the window, wrapping his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "I've survived in this world for a long time, Ella. I know how to protect myself, and now I have even more reason to be careful." He turned me to face him, "Because I have you to come home to." I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he was invincible, that nothing could touch him. But I'd seen enough in my nursing career to know that no one was untouchable, that violence and death didn't care about love or good intentions. What happens if— I couldn't finish the sentence. "It won't. You can't promise that." His expression grew serious. "You're right. I can't. But I can promise that I'll fight with everything I have to come back to you. Always." It wasn't enough, but it was all he could offer, and I loved him too much to ask for more. My friends noticed the changes. "You've been MIA for weeks," my best friend Sarah complained when I finally met her for coffee. "Who is this guy, and why have you been keeping him a secret?" I'd been deliberately vague about Dante, unsure how to explain him without explaining everything. "He's complicated." "Complicated how? Is he married? In witness protection? A secret agent?" "None of those things." I stirred my latte, trying to find words that were honest without being dangerous. He has a demanding job, and his life is different from what I'm used to. But Sarah, he's amazing. He treats me like I'm the most important person in the world. He makes me feel seen and valued, and you're in love with him. It wasn't a question. Sarah knew me too well to miss the signs. Yeah, I admitted. I am. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Then I'm happy for you. You deserve someone who appreciates you, especially after everything Derek put you through. Just be careful, okay? You have this look in your eyes, like you're walking a tightrope. I don't want to see you get hurt. I won't, I promised, hoping I was right. But danger found me anyway. It happened on a Thursday evening. I was leaving the hospital after a double shift, exhausted and thinking about nothing except the hot shower and warm bed waiting for me at Dante's place. My usual bodyguard, Marcus, was parked in his standard spot near the employee entrance. Except when I got closer, I realized the man in the driver's seat wasn't Marcus. I stopped walking, every instinct screaming danger. The man noticed my hesitation and got out of the car, and I saw immediately that something was very wrong. His stance, his expression, the way his hand moved toward his waist. "Miss Ella, Mr. Moretti sent me to collect you," he said, but his tone was all wrong. Too aggressive, too threatening. I backed away. "Where's Marcus?" He was reassigned. "Get in the car." "No!" His expression hardened, and now his hand definitely moved to his waist, where I caught a glimpse of a gun. That wasn't a request. Panic flooded through me. I was in a parking lot at night, alone, with a man who clearly meant me harm. I thought about screaming, about running, Then Marcus appeared, seemingly from nowhere, slamming into my would-be kidnapper with brutal efficiency. They went down in a tangle of limbs, and I heard Marcus shout, "Run! Now!" I ran, back toward the hospital entrance, my heart hammering, my mind screaming with fear. I burst through the doors and collapsed against the reception desk, gasping. "Call 911, I managed. "There's a fight in the parking lot," but before the receptionist could respond, my phone rang. Dante's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with shaking hands. "Where are you?" His voice was sharp with urgency. "Hospital lobby. Dante, someone tried to grab me, but Marcus..." "I know. Stay exactly where you are. I'm 5 minutes away." He made it in 3. I saw him through the hospital's glass doors, striding across the parking lot with 6 men flanking him, his expression absolutely murderous. He burst into the lobby, his eyes scanning until they found me. And then he was there, pulling me into his arms with a desperation I'd never felt from him before. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over me, checking for injuries. "No. Scared but not hurt." Marcus saved me. "Is he?" "He's fine. He's been taken to the hospital, just precautionary. The other man is being handled." I didn't ask what that meant. Didn't want to know. "Who was he? Why did he try to take me?" Dante's jaw clenched. "His name was Tony Russo. He works for the Castellano family, my rivals. They've been pushing into my territory for months, and this..." His arms tightened around me. "This was them sending a message. They wanted to take you to use against me. Because of us." "Yes." I pulled back to look at him, seeing the guilt and fury warring in his expression. "This is what you meant when you said knowing you was dangerous." "Yes. And I'm sorry, Ella. God, I'm so sorry. I should have had better security. Should have anticipated." "Stop." I pressed my fingers to his lips. "I'm not leaving you because of this. I'm angry, yes. I'm scared, definitely. But I'm not running. They tried to use me against you, and they failed. We'll be more careful. We'll beef up security, but we don't let them win by destroying what we have." He kissed me then, right there in the hospital lobby, with his men watching and the receptionist staring. It was desperate and possessive and full of all the fear he'd been holding back. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "I should have told you before, but I love you, Ella. You're everything to me." "I love you too," I whispered back, "even when it's terrifying, especially then." The attempted kidnapping changed everything. Dante became fiercely protective, almost obsessively so. I couldn't go anywhere without at least 2 bodyguards. My apartment was fitted with a new security system that probably could have protected Fort Knox, and Dante himself barely let me out of his sight, working from home more often. rearranging his schedule to match mine. I should have chafed at the restrictions. Instead, I felt cherished, like I was something precious worth protecting. But I also saw another side of Dante during those weeks, the ruthless mob boss who commanded absolute loyalty and delivered swift, brutal justice. The Castellanos made a mistake, he told me one night as we lay in bed, his fingers tracing absent patterns on my shoulder. They went after what's mine. Now they'll learn what that costs. What are you going to do? He was quiet for a long moment. What I have to keep you safe, to send a message that you are untouchable. I didn't push for details, didn't ask about the increased number of meetings, the tense phone calls, the way his men looked at him with a mixture of respect and anticipation. I'd accepted who Dante was, and that meant accepting all of him, the gentle lover and the dangerous criminal. The consequences came 2 weeks later. I was at work when Sarah pulled me aside, her face pale, her phone clutched in her hand. "Have you seen the news?" she asked. "No, why?" She showed me her screen. The headline made my blood run cold. Mafia war erupts. Castellano family loses territory in bloody takeover. The article detailed a coordinated strike by Dante's organization. Warehouses seized, businesses shut down, key Castellano lieutenants arrested or disappeared. The Castellano family's power had been systematically dismantled in a single night. And at the bottom of the article was a quote from an unnamed source. This was personal. Someone went after Moretti's woman. He made them pay for it. Sarah stared at me. "Please tell me your boyfriend isn't involved in this." I couldn't lie to her. "He's protecting me." "Ella," her voice was horrified. "This isn't protection. This is a gang war. People could die. Are you seriously okay with this?" Was I? The question haunted me for the rest of my shift. Was I okay with Dante's methods? With the violence he used to keep me safe? Could I love a man who destroyed his enemies without hesitation? But when I came home that night and found Dante waiting for me, looking exhausted and dangerous, and relieved to see me, I knew the answer. "I saw the news," I said. He nodded, his expression guarded. And I understand why you did it. I don't like the violence, Dante. I wish there was another way. But I also know you were protecting me, protecting us. So I'm not going to condemn you for that." Relief washed over his face. "I thought you might leave. I'm not that easy to get rid of." I crossed to him, wrapping my arms around his waist. "But we need to talk about boundaries, about what I can accept and what I can't. Because I love you, but I also need to be able to live with myself. Tell me your boundaries, and I'll respect them." Oh, we talked for hours that night, establishing rules for our relationship. No violence in my presence, no involving me in his business unless absolutely necessary, no lies. If I asked him something directly, he'd answer honestly. And in return, I'd trust him to keep me safe, to make the hard decisions, to be the man his world required him to be. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was ours. Life gradually returned to a new normal. The Castellanos, broken and diminished, retreated to lick their wounds. Other families got the message. Dante Moretti's woman was off limits, and I learned to navigate the strange dual existence of being both a normal hospital nurse and the girlfriend of one of the city's most powerful crime bosses. "You're handling this remarkably well," Dante observed one lazy Sunday morning as we made breakfast together in his penthouse kitchen. "Stockholm Syndrome," I suggested, flipping a pancake. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I didn't kidnap you." "No, but you did sweep me off my feet with dramatic flair and dangerous charisma." Guilty as charged. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and kissing my neck. "Any regrets?" I turned in his arms, looking up at this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man I'd fallen so completely in love with. Not a single one. I should have known Derek wouldn't stay gone. It had been 4 months since Dante had warned him off. 4 months of peace where I'd almost forgotten about my ex-fiancé entirely. I was too busy building a life with Dante, too wrapped up in the intoxicating intensity of our relationship to spare thoughts for the man who'd betrayed me. But Derek clearly hadn't forgotten me. It started with messages. They came from blocked numbers, appearing on my phone at random times. "I miss you. We should talk. He's dangerous, Ella. I'm worried about you." I deleted them without responding, but they kept coming, escalating in desperation. "You're making a mistake with him. I can protect you better than he can. Remember what we had. Don't throw it away." Finally, one message made me pause. "I know things about Moretti. Things that could help you. Meet me, please." I showed Dante the messages that night. His expression darkened as he scrolled through them, his jaw clenching tighter with each one. "How long has this been going on?" 2 weeks. I didn't want to bother you with it. I thought he'd give up. He won't. Men like Derek, they can't stand losing, especially to someone they perceive as competition. His ego can't handle that you chose me over him." He handed back my phone, his hand lingering on mine. "I'll take care of it." What does that mean? It means I'll have a more direct conversation with him, one that leaves no room for misinterpretation. I bit my lip, worry gnawing at me. Please don't hurt him. I know he's being a pest, but he's not worth— "I won't hurt him," Dante promised, "unless he gives me no choice. But Ella, he needs to understand definitively that you're off limits. His persistence isn't romantic, it's harassment. And it stops now." I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I could handle Derek myself. But the truth was, Derek had never respected my boundaries, never really listened when I said no. Maybe he needed to hear it from someone he'd actually fear. "Okay," I agreed. "But please, let's try to handle this without it becoming another Mafia incident." Dante smiled slightly. "No promises, but I'll do my best." 2 days later, Derek showed up at the hospital. I was on my lunch break, eating a sandwich in the staff cafeteria, when he slid into the seat across from me. He looked terrible, disheveled, with dark circles under his eyes and a manic energy that set off every alarm bell in my head. "You blocked my number," he said without preamble, "because you wouldn't stop harassing me. I'm trying to save you, Ella. Do you have any idea who Dante Moretti is? What he does? I've been researching him, and he's dangerous. He's a killer, a criminal. I know what he is. That stopped him cold. You know? And you're still with him?" "Yes. Derek, we're done. We've been done for months. You need to move on." "Move on?" His voice rose, attracting stares from nearby tables. "You're throwing away everything we had for some thug with money? This isn't you, Ella. He's changed you, manipulated you. He's shown me what it's like to be valued." I interrupted, my voice hard. "To be treasured instead of taken for granted. To be someone's priority instead of their backup plan. You cheated on me, Derek. You called me nothing. And now you have the audacity to show up here and act like you care about my well-being? You don't get to do that. You lost that right." His face flushed red with anger. "I made one mistake." "One mistake? You had an affair with a coworker while planning our wedding. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Multiple choices. And I've made my choice too. To be with someone who actually respects me." "He's going to get you killed!" Derek shouted, standing so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "His world is violent and dangerous, and when someone comes for him, you'll be collateral damage. Is that what you want?" Before I could respond, Marcus appeared at my side. He must have been nearby, heard the commotion. His presence was solid and reassuring. "Is there a problem here?" Marcus asked, his tone friendly, but his stance unmistakably threatening. Derek's eyes widened as he recognized Marcus from the parking lot months ago. "This is insane. Ella, please. Just listen to me." "No." I stood, gathering my things. "I'm done listening, Derek. I'm happy. Happier than I ever was with you. And you need to accept that and leave me alone. When this ends badly, and it will, don't come crying to me." Derek spat, his desperation morphing into bitterness. "I won't," I assured him. "Goodbye, Derek." I walked away, Marcus falling into step beside me, leaving Derek standing alone in the cafeteria looking lost and angry. That evening, I told Dante everything. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable, until I finished. "He's not going to stop," Dante said finally. "Not unless I make him." "What are you going to do?" "Have a conversation. That's all. Just a conversation where I make certain things very clear." I wanted to protest, to argue that violence wasn't the answer. But I also knew Derek wouldn't listen to reason, wouldn't respect boundaries unless they came with consequences. "Don't hurt him," I said again, the words feeling inadequate. "Please, Dante. For me." He cupped my face in his hands, his gray eyes intense. "For you, Dolcezza. I'll be merciful. But he needs to understand that his obsession ends now. That you're mine, and I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered me. Instead, it made me feel safe, cherished in a primal way I couldn't quite explain. "I'm yours," I agreed softly. "And you're mine. Always," he promised, kissing me with a tenderness that belied his dangerous reputation. Whatever conversation Dante had with Derek happened outside my knowledge. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know the specifics. All I knew was that the messages stopped. Derek stopped showing up. And when I ran into him weeks later at a coffee shop, he took one look at me, went pale, and left immediately. "What did you say to him?" I asked Dante that night. He smiled, an expression that held both satisfaction and something darker. "Just the truth, that you're loved, protected, and completely off limits, and that if he ever bothered you again, I'd make sure he regretted it in ways he couldn't imagine." "And he believed you?" "Oh, he believed me. I can be very convincing when I need to be." I decided not to pursue it further. Derek was out of our lives, and that was all that mattered. "Thank you," I said simply. "For you. Anything," Dante replied, pulling me close. "You never have to thank me for protecting what we have." And in his arms, I finally felt free from the shadow Derek had cast over my life, free to embrace the future Dante and I were building together. Meeting Dante's family was inevitable, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. "They're going to love you," Dante assured me for the 10th time as we drove to his mother's house for Sunday dinner. "You don't know that. What if they think I'm not good enough for you? What if they see me as an outsider who doesn't belong in your world?" He reached over, lacing his fingers with mine. "Then they'd be wrong. Ella, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. My family will see that." I wished I had his confidence. The Moretti family home was a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, all wrought iron gates and manicured gardens. Dante's mother, Isabella, greeted us at the door, an elegant woman in her 60s with kind eyes, and Dante's same sharp cheekbones. "You must be Ella," she said, pulling me into a warm hug before I could offer a handshake. "My son talks about you constantly. I was beginning to think you were imaginary." "Mama," Dante protested, but he was smiling. Inside, the house was warm and chaotic, in the way only a large Italian family could be. Dante's 3 sisters descended on me immediately, full of questions and observations and laughter. His father, Marco, a stern older version of Dante, observed from his chair by the fireplace, his expression unreadable. Dinner was a loud, boisterous affair, multiple courses, flowing wine, conversations that overlapped and interrupted each other with affectionate casualness. I sat between Dante and his youngest sister, Lucia, who regaled me with embarrassing stories about Dante's childhood. "He used to collect stray cats," Lucia confided, giggling. "Drove Mama crazy. We had like 15 cats at one point." "I was 9, Dante protested, "and they needed homes." "You had a soft heart even then," Isabella observed, her eyes twinkling, "though you tried to hide it." "Still does," I added, squeezing Dante's hand under the table. After dinner, Marco requested to speak with me privately. Dante started to protest, but his father's look silenced him, and I followed the older man into his study with my heart pounding. The study was all dark wood and leather, lined with books and photographs chronicling the Moretti family history. Marco settled into a chair behind his massive desk and gestured for me to sit across from him. "You love my son," he said, without preamble. "Yes, sir. Very much. And you know what he is. What we are." "Yes." He studied me for a long moment. "Most women run when they learn the truth, or they stay for the wrong reasons. The money, the power, the excitement. You don't strike me as either type. I'm not. I stay because Dante makes me happy, because he's good to me, treats me with respect, makes me feel valued. The rest," I gestured vaguely, encompassing the family business, "I've learned to accept because it's part of who he is. You're a nurse." "Yes, sir. An honorable profession. You save lives. We," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "we sometimes do the opposite." I met his gaze steadily. "Everyone deserves someone who sees the best in them. Dante's shown me parts of himself that I don't think many people get to see, and I like to think I bring out the better angels of his nature." A ghost of a smile crossed Marco's stern features. "You do. I've seen the change in him these past months. He's happier, more grounded, less reckless." He leaned forward. "My wife had the same effect on me once. She made me want to be better than I was. That's the mark of a good woman." "Thank you, sir." Call me Marco. And welcome to the family, Ella. Officially. He stood, extending his hand. When I shook it, his grip was firm, but not crushing. Hurt my son, and mother or not, Isabella will make you regret it, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. I laughed, relief flooding through me. No, sir, Marco, that's not going to be a problem. When I returned to the living room, Dante's anxious expression transformed into relief. Well, your father is terrifying, I said honestly, but he gave us his blessing. Dante pulled me into his arms, kissing me deeply despite his sister's catcalls and his mother's amused tisking. Told you they'd love you, he murmured against my lips. The rest of the evening was perfect. I learned family recipes from Isabella, heard stories about Dante's father's younger days, carefully edited, I suspected, and laughed until my sides hurt at the sisters' banter. By the time we left, I felt like I truly belonged, like I'd been adopted into this warm, chaotic, slightly terrifying clan. Your family is amazing, I told Dante on the drive home. They are, and now they're your family too. The weight of that statement settled over me, not oppressive, but comforting. I'd lost so much when my own parents died years ago, had felt adrift and alone even before Derek's betrayal. But now I had this, a new family, a new belonging, a place where I fit. I could get used to this, I said softly. Good. Dante's hand found mine again. Because I'm not letting you go, Ella. Not now, not ever. And looking at him, this dangerous, tender, complicated man who'd walked into my life when I needed him most, I believed him. 6 months into our relationship, Dante took me to the cafe where we'd first met. It was late afternoon, the same time of day when I'd been sitting alone, heartbroken and lost. And he'd walked in and changed everything. Now we sat in that same booth, coffee growing cold in front of us as we talked and laughed and simply existed together. Do you remember what I said to you that day? Dante asked suddenly. You said a lot of things. That I looked like I needed saving. That I was more interesting than I realized. That I deserved better than whoever made me cry. And I was right. About all of it. I smiled. Your humility is truly inspiring. He laughed, then grew serious. Ella, that day in this cafe, it was the luckiest day of my life. I'd come here for a meeting, was in a terrible mood, and then I saw you, and something in me just knew you were important, knew you were going to change everything. I felt it too, I admitted, this pull toward you that didn't make sense. You were a stranger, obviously dangerous, and I'd just had my heart broken, but I couldn't look away. Good. He reached across the table, taking both my hands in his. Because I have something to ask you, and I need you to not look away now. My heart started pounding. Dante, he slid out of the booth, and before I could process what was happening, he was kneeling beside the table, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The cafe went silent. Other patrons stopped their conversations, turning to watch. Ella Martinez, Dante said, his gray eyes locked on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. You walked into my life when I didn't know I needed you. You saw past the reputation, past the danger, past everything that makes most people run. You made me want to be better, made me believe I could be more than what I was born to be, and I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. He opened the box, revealing a ring that sparkled even in the cafe's dim lighting. A perfect diamond set in platinum, elegant and understated and absolutely breathtaking. Will you marry me? He asked simply. Tears were streaming down my face, and I didn't care that everyone was watching. Didn't care that my voice shook when I answered. Yes. God, yes. Of course I'll marry you. The cafe erupted in applause as Dante slid the ring onto my finger and pulled me into a kiss that made me forget where we were, forget everything except the feel of him and the promise of our future. When we finally pulled apart, he was smiling wider than I'd ever seen. I was terrified you'd say no, he admitted. Why would I say no to the best thing that ever happened to me? Planning the wedding became an adventure in navigating two very different worlds. My friends wanted a small, intimate ceremony. Dante's family insisted on a massive celebration befitting the Moretti name. We compromised with a medium-sized affair, 200 guests, a beautiful venue, and enough security to guard a presidential inauguration. Is all this really necessary? I asked, watching Dante's men sweep the venue for the third time. You're about to become a Moretti, Dante explained. That makes you a target for people who want to hurt me. So yes, the security is necessary. I'm not taking any chances with your safety." It was a sobering reminder that marrying Dante meant marrying into his world completely, accepting all the complications that came with his name. But as I watched him carefully review security protocols, saw the fierce protectiveness in every gesture, I couldn't regret my choice. The wedding day arrived in a whirlwind of activity. My friends helped me dress in a gown that made me feel like a princess, all lace and silk and delicate beading. Isabella loaned me her own veil, a family heirloom that made me tear up at the gesture. "You're family now," she said simply, adjusting it in my hair. "This is where you belong." Walking down the aisle toward Dante felt surreal. He stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his eyes locked on me with such intensity, such love, that I forgot about the 200 guests watching, forgot about everything except him. "You're stunning," he whispered when I reached him. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. The ceremony was traditional, officiated by a priest Marco had known for decades. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, mine promising to love him through all the complexities of his life, his promising to cherish and protect me always. When the priest pronounced us husband and wife, Dante's kiss was tender and possessive at once, a claiming that made my toes curl. The reception was everything his family had promised, excessive and joyful and full of love. We danced until my feet ached, laughed until my cheeks hurt, and celebrated our union with the two families that had become one. "Happy?" Dante asked during a quiet moment on the terrace, the reception continuing without us inside. "Deliriously," I assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though my feet are killing me." He laughed, pulling me closer. "We can leave whenever you want. I've fulfilled my social obligations. Now I just want to be alone with my wife." My wife. The words sent a thrill through me. "Let's go," I decided. "Let's start our honeymoon early." We slipped away from our own reception, racing to the car like teenagers, laughing at the absurdity and perfection of it all. As we drove away from the venue toward the private villa Dante had rented for our 2-week honeymoon, I looked at my wedding ring, the physical symbol of the promise we'd made, and felt a peace I'd never experienced before. "I love you, Mrs. Moretti," Dante said, bringing my hand to his lips and kissing my knuckles. "I love you too," I replied. "Always." And looking ahead at the road stretching before us, illuminated by headlights and possibility, I couldn't wait to see where it led. Marriage to Dante was everything I'd hoped and more complicated than I'd imagined. The honeymoon was perfect. 2 weeks in a private Italian villa, where we existed in a bubble of happiness, far from the demands of his business and the realities of his world. But returning home meant facing those realities head-on. "I need you to understand something," Dante said on our first night back, his tone serious as we unpacked. "Being my wife makes you a partner in everything. That means there will be things I need to tell you, decisions I need your input on. I won't hide my world from you anymore. You're in this with me now, completely." It was both thrilling and terrifying. What if I don't know how to navigate that world? "You'll learn, and I'll teach you. But Ella," he took my hands, his expression intense. "You can never repeat what I tell you. Trust is everything in my business. If people think you're a liability, they'll come after you. You need to be smart, cautious, and absolutely loyal. I can do that, and I tried. I really did." Dante began including me in more aspects of his life. Not the violent parts, true to his promise, but the business decisions, the political maneuvers, the delicate balance of power he maintained. I learned who his allies were, which families could be trusted, where the threats lay hidden. It was like learning a new language, one spoken in careful phrases and meaningful silences. But 3 months into our marriage, I made a mistake. I was having coffee with Sarah, my best friend, and she was complaining about her landlord raising her rent. "It's criminal," she fumed. "Like literal extortion. But what can I do? Affordable apartments in this city are impossible to find." Without thinking, I said, "I might be able to help. Dante knows people who own properties. Maybe I can get you a deal." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." I made a few calls, pulled a few strings, and within a week, Sarah had a beautiful new apartment at an impossibly low rent. She was thrilled, and I felt good about helping my friend, until Dante found out. "You did what?" His voice was dangerously quiet. We were in his study, and he'd just been informed by one of his property managers about the rental arrangement I'd made. I helped Sarah find an apartment. She was struggling, and I thought, "You thought you could use my resources, my connections, without consulting me? She's my best friend. I was just trying to help her, and in doing so, you showed weakness." He stood, pacing with barely contained frustration. "Ella, in my world, every favor creates debt. Every connection is calculated. By giving your friend a below-market apartment, you've created questions. Why would I do that? What does she know? What leverage do I have over her? People will assume things, will try to exploit that connection." I felt my face flush with shame and anger. So what? I'm supposed to let my friends suffer because helping them might look bad? You're supposed to ask me first. His voice rose. Then he caught himself, taking a breath. "I'm not saying you can't help people you care about. I'm saying you need to understand the implications before you act. Every move we make is watched, analyzed, used against us if possible. You can't be naive about that anymore." "I'm sorry," I said stiffly. I didn't realize being a good friend was a strategic error. "Don't." His tone softened. "Don't twist my words. I'm not saying you were wrong to want to help Sarah. I'm saying you need to think about the consequences in my world. Our world now." The correction stung because he was right. I'd acted impulsively, without considering how my actions might affect him, might affect us. "I'm still learning," I said quietly. "I'm going to make mistakes. I know." He crossed to me, pulling me into his arms despite the tension between us. "And I'll be patient while you learn. But Ella, mistakes in my world can be deadly, not just for me, but for you. I need you to be careful, to think before you act, to trust me when I say something is dangerous." I nodded against his chest, feeling the weight of responsibility settling over me like a cloak. Being Mrs. Moretti wasn't just about wearing a ring and sharing his bed. It was about understanding power, about recognizing that every action had consequences that rippled outward. "I'll do better," I promised. "I know you will." The incident with Sarah taught me to be more cautious, but it also created distance between my old life and my new one. Sarah didn't understand why I suddenly seemed hesitant to help with other problems, why I was less available, why my advice often came with caveats and warnings. "You've changed," she said one day over lunch, her tone somewhere between accusation and concern. "Ever since you married Dante, it's like you're a different person. More guarded, less you." "I'm still me," I insisted. "I'm just learning to navigate a complicated situation." "By pulling away from everyone who knew you before?" The words hit harder than she probably intended. Was I pulling away? Maybe. But how could I explain that my world now operated by different rules? That casual friendships felt dangerous when people might try to use them against Dante? "I'm not pulling away," I said, even though we both knew it was at least partially a lie. "I'm just balancing things." But the truth was, the balance was hard to find. My co-workers at the hospital treated me differently now that they knew who I'd married. Some with respect, some with fear, some with a distance that hurt. My old friends gradually stopped calling as often, sensing the walls I'd unconsciously built. The only place I felt completely myself was with Dante and his family, who understood the complexities I navigated daily. "It gets easier," Isabella told me one afternoon when I visited her, needing advice. "Learning to live in two worlds, the public one where you're just Ella the nurse, and the private one where you're Ella Moretti. Eventually, you find a way to integrate them. How long did it take you?" She smiled. "Years, honestly, but I had to learn in a different time, when women weren't expected to have careers outside the family. You're navigating something harder, trying to maintain your independence while also being part of something bigger. It's admirable, but it won't be easy." "I don't want to lose myself," I admitted. "I don't want to become just Dante's wife and nothing else." "Then don't." Dante fell in love with Ella the nurse, the woman with her own life and dreams. He won't want you to give that up, but you will have to set boundaries. Make choices about what you're willing to compromise and what you're not. Her words gave me courage to have a difficult conversation with Dante that night. "I need to keep working," I told him over dinner. "I know it would be easier if I quit, if I just focused on being your wife and navigating your world, but nursing is part of who I am. It grounds me, and I don't want to give it up." I'd expected him to argue, to list all the security concerns and complications. Instead, He reached across the table and took my hand. I never expected you to quit. Your work matters, Ella. It's part of what I love about you, that you have this whole part of your life that has nothing to do with me or my family or our world. Keep it. I'll adjust security. Make sure you're protected, but don't give up something that makes you who you are. Relief flooded through me. Really? Really. I married you, not some version of you that I tried to mold into what I needed. All of you, including the parts that have nothing to do with being a Moretti. I came around the table and kissed him, pouring all my gratitude and love into it. Thank you, I whispered. Always, he replied. The months that followed were about finding balance. I continued working at the hospital, but I was more careful about who I trusted, more aware of my surroundings. I maintained friendships, but with clearer boundaries. I learned to navigate Dante's world with more confidence, understanding when to speak and when to listen, how to read the power dynamics in every room. And slowly, the two parts of my life, Ella the nurse and Ella Moretti, began to feel less like separate identities and more like different facets of the same person. But just when I thought I'd found my footing, a new test arrived. Dante came home one night looking troubled, and I knew immediately something was wrong. What happened? He poured himself a drink, something he rarely did, and sat heavily on the couch. There's a situation. The Castellanos, what's left of them, they've allied with a family from Chicago. They're making a play to take back territory I took from them. That's bad. It's war, Ella. Real war. Not just posturing or threats, but actual violence. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Fear coiled in my stomach. What does that mean for us? It means increased security. It means I'll be gone more, handling things. It means you need to be extra careful, extra vigilant. They failed to take you once before. They might try again, especially now that you're my wife. I moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. We'll get through this. I need you to consider staying at my family's estate for a while, just until this blows over. The security there is better, and— No. He looked at me sharply. Ella, no, I repeated firmly. I'm not hiding. I'm not going to live in fear, locked away while you handle everything. We're partners, remember? That means we face this together. It's too dangerous. Then we make it less dangerous. More security, better protocols, whatever you need. But I'm not leaving you, and I'm not abandoning my life out of fear. They don't get to win by making me run. He studied me for a long moment, and I saw pride mixing with worry in his expression. You're stubborn. You married me knowing that. A slight smile crossed his face. I did. Okay, we'll do this together. But you follow every security protocol, no exceptions. You don't go anywhere without your guards. You check in with me constantly. And if I say you need to leave, you go. No arguments. Deal. He pulled me close, and I felt the tension in his body, the weight of responsibility he carried. I won't let anything happen to you, he promised. Whatever it takes, I'll keep you safe. I know, I said. But Dante, you need to keep yourself safe too, because I need you. We're building a life together, and I need you to be in it. I'll be careful, he promised. For you, I'll be careful. As we sat there holding each other, I understood that this was marriage, not just the romance and passion, but the fear and struggle, the standing together against threats, the choosing each other again and again despite the danger, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The war with the Castellano-Chicago alliance lasted 3 brutal months. 3 months of living with constant security, of Dante coming home exhausted and sometimes injured, of lying awake at night terrified that he wouldn't come home at all. 3 months of proving to myself and everyone else that I was strong enough to be Dante Moretti's wife. But through it all, I kept working, kept saving lives at the hospital, while Dante did what he had to do to protect our world. It was a strange dichotomy, spending my days healing people while knowing my husband was engaged in violence. But I'd learned to hold both truths, to accept the complexity of our reality. The turning point came unexpectedly. I was working a night shift when they brought in a gunshot victim, a young man, barely 20, bleeding out from a wound to his abdomen. The ER was chaos, and we worked frantically to stabilize him, to stop the bleeding, to save his life. It was only after we'd gotten him to surgery that I recognized the tattoo on his arm, the Castellano family mark. My hands were still shaking from the adrenaline when Marcus appeared at my side. Mrs. Moretti, we need to go, now. What? Why? That patient you just saved. He's Anthony Castellano's nephew. The family knows he's here. It's not safe." But before we could leave, a group of men burst through the ER doors. Castellanos, armed and looking for their family member. I stepped forward before Marcus could stop me, my scrubs still covered in their nephew's blood. "He's in surgery," I announced, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "He's alive because my team and I spent the last hour saving his life. Now you can either leave and let us do our jobs, or you can cause a scene that gets people killed. Your choice." The lead man, Anthony Castellano himself, I realized, stared at me with cold eyes. "You're Moretti's wife. I'm also a nurse. And right now, I'm the reason your nephew isn't dead. So I'm going to ask you politely to take your weapons outside and wait like civilized people while the surgeons finish saving his life." The tension was suffocating. Marcus had his hand on his weapon, ready to protect me. The Castellanos were clearly armed. One wrong move, and the ER would become a bloodbath. Then Anthony Castellano did something unexpected. He lowered his gun. "All right, we'll wait." He looked at his men. "Outside. Now." They left, and I nearly collapsed with relief. Marcus steadied me, his expression somewhere between impressed and horrified. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen," he muttered. "Probably both," I admitted. 3 hours later, the surgeon emerged with good news. The nephew would survive. Anthony Castellano received the news with a curt nod, then turned to me. "You saved my nephew's life. I'm a nurse. It's my job. Even though we're at war with your husband, my job doesn't have sides. Only patients who need help." He studied me for a long moment. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you, apparently." A ghost of a smile crossed his hard features. "Tell your husband I want to meet. To talk. No weapons, neutral ground. After what you did tonight, maybe it's time we reconsider this war." When I told Dante later, he was furious. "You confronted armed Castellanos? Ella, they could have killed you. But they didn't. And Dante, they want to talk, really talk, about ending this. Because you saved one kid's life? Because I showed them that not everything has to be about violence and vengeance. That sometimes mercy is stronger than revenge." He stared at me, anger and admiration warring in his expression. "You're going to give me a heart attack, you know that?" "Probably. But admit it, I might have just ended your war." He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You're incredible. Terrifying and reckless and absolutely incredible." The meeting happened a week later. Dante and Anthony Castellano sitting across from each other at a neutral restaurant, negotiating terms. I wasn't present for the details, but Dante told me later that my actions had given Anthony a way to end the war without losing face. "He couldn't back down while we were just fighting," Dante explained. "But after you saved his nephew, after showing him that Moretti's value life, he could frame peace as honoring a debt, rather than admitting defeat. So it's over? It's over. New territory agreements, mutual non-interference, and an understanding that you," he touched my face gently, "are completely off limits to everyone. Anthony made sure every family knows that Ella Moretti is untouchable." Relief flooded through me. "We can actually relax now? We can try," he said with a slight smile. "Though knowing you, you'll find some other way to give me gray hair." Life gradually returned to something resembling normal. The heightened security relaxed. Dante came home at reasonable hours. We talked about buying a house, maybe starting a family eventually, building the future we'd been fighting for. One evening, 6 months after the war ended, we returned to the cafe where everything had started. Same booth, same afternoon light, but everything was different now. "Do you ever regret it?" Dante asked. "Calling that number? Taking a chance on a dangerous stranger?" I thought about everything we'd been through. The danger, the complications, the tests and trials. Thought about Derek's betrayal that had seemed like the end of my world, but had actually been the beginning of something better. "Not for a second," I said honestly. "You saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. You made me stronger, braver, more sure of who I am. Why would I regret that? Even with all the chaos, the danger, especially with that, because it taught me that I'm capable of more than I thought. That love isn't just flowers and romance. It's standing together when things get hard. It's choosing each other again and again." He reached across the table, taking my hand, and running his thumb over my wedding ring. I told you that first day that you deserved better than whoever made you cry. I've spent every day since trying to be better than what you deserve. You are, I assured him. You're everything, Dante. My partner, my protector, my best friend, the man who knows my worth and reminds me of it every single day. I love you, Ella Moretti. I love you too. As we sat there in the booth where our story began, I thought about Derek's words, "She's nothing," and smiled. He'd been so wrong. I wasn't nothing. I was a wife, a nurse, a survivor, a fighter. I was someone who'd faced down armed mobsters to save a life, who'd learned to navigate a dangerous world without losing herself, who'd found love in the most unexpected place. I was Ella Moretti, and I knew my worth. Thank you so much for joining me on Ella and Dante's incredible journey. If you loved this story, I'd be truly grateful if you could hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more emotional stories like this one. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What was your favorite moment from their story? Drop a quick comment below. I read every single one and your thoughts mean the world to me. Thank you again for being here.